Hey everyone, Jacob here from That Time We Woke Up at a Podcast and Had to Explain Manga, our heated adventures over analyzing manga we find interesting, aka the Over Manga Cast. I was hoping we could save this kind of episode for a big announcement, but, well, December is busy. So this week, we read RWBY the Official Manga by Bunta Kanami. We read chapters 1 through 12, and since this is also a bonus episode of the Over Echo Chamber, we took this episode in a bit of a different direction than we normally do, and focused on the adaptational aspects of the project. We had a lot of fun discussing this one, so I hope you do too, and enjoy the show.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Over Manga Cast. My name is Sam, and as always here at the top of the show, we talk about our familiarity with the franchise we read this week. And this is a special treat of an episode. It's an Over Echo Chamber, but also a regular episode. Hi Jake, what's your familiarity with RWBY?
You get to see the terror of the two of us doing the podcast normally all on our own. Familiarity with RWBY. Yeah, I think I've heard of the series before, probably.
Says the man who's harassed me literally every day for God knows how long that I need to catch up.
Well, you do. He is only most of the way through season 7, and it's a crime.
I'm a busy man, dude.
I
only have so much time for the fun cartoon gaze.
But yeah, RWBY is one of my favorite series of all time. I am really sad that it has gone through so much legal tumult, and I am really sad that it has a dedicated group of haters who really want to see the series fail for some reason I can't grasp or fathom. It is a series with so much heart, so much personality. The characters are amazing for the most part. It has a bit of a problem with its capital V villains, but fortunately we're dealing with Torchwick in this section, so we won't have that problem. But like, such a great world. It's so creative. The fight scenes are amazing. The story is amazing. The characters are spectacular. It's something that I have loved since I discovered it through the Red trailer all those years ago. I actually initially picked up the series right after Monty Ohm's passing. So I got to binge the first 2 seasons and then wait forever for season 3 to come out. I am current with as far as the series has been able to go because of all of the shenanigans, dating the episode a little bit, but we're due to some scheduling shenanigans, we're recording this a little bit ahead. Hopefully you're hearing this because it has been gloriously announced that season 10 is being released soon. I'm reading that sweet, sweet SEO.
Fingers crossed on that one. I will take any SEO that I can get. But yeah, as Jake alluded to, I am only up to season 7 so far. When RWBY was originally gaining a whole bunch of traction, I was in college and a big fan of Red vs. Blue. So that's how I knew about Rooster Teeth, and just being a fan of Rooster Teeth in those days, it was hard to miss RWBY.
I actually found Red vs. Blue through RWBY, funnily enough. I saw the Red trailer and I was convinced that it couldn't be real. This was just someone's overambitious trailer that was never going to come into anything, not knowing that season 2 had already been finished. And I went to Rooster Teeth, found Red vs. Blue, watched all of it, loved it because it's amazing, or at least as far as I watched to, because it continued past its ending twice, and it actually worked the first time. I don't know about the second time because I refuse to watch past that second ending. It makes me cry. But yeah, I then also proceeded to watch all of RWBY, so there you go.
I was there in the early days when the trailers were originally dropping. I remember Red trailer on repeat for a long ass time. I have had less of a consistent viewing experience of it than Jake has, or Jake would like. I catch up to where it is, and then I lose track of it for a few years, and then I binge it a bunch, and then I lose track of it again. But I'm gonna get caught up to the currents. It's gonna have to drag me over the
I will drag
line.
you kicking and screaming, and you will enjoy it the entire time, as is usually the case with these sorts of things. You know, I will freely admit that there are some cases where I will also do the same thing with RWBY. I just happen to be caught up. There is the element of, because I love it so much, I'm worried that it will disappoint me, and I get stupidly scared of watching it sometimes. So it took me way longer to watch season 9 than it should have, and oh boy, I regret that because it was so good. This is something different.
Yes, our extremely long preamble aside,
Yeah, in ways that are both surprising and not so surprising. This is a very different experience because this is the official RWBY manga, something that I wish doubled down on its changes instead of just being mediocre shovelware. But we'll get into that.
Indeed, we will get into that. We open up where the show opens up with a robbery in a dust store by a man in a bowler hat.
Roman Torchwick, one of the few good early villains of this series. I suppose you can throw Neo in there, but she's basically just Torchwick's right hand. The intro is, and like this is true for a lot of the manga, it's a bit truncated because it doesn't have and I'm going to be giving spoilers for up to what Sam knows. So I will be name dropping certain characters and talking about certain plot elements from later, and I'll just allude to everything else. We'll get to that. The big thing is that it doesn't have the preamble by Ozpin and Salem going back and forth on the state of the world, which is an interesting choice. I'm pretty sure this was kind of expected not to go anywhere and really only go through the first couple of arcs of the show. So the fact that they leave that out makes some degree of sense if they didn't expect this to go anywhere, which is cynically expected.
Mm.
But the other thing that it cuts out, and it's interesting because I don't think that this is a bad introduction to our main character. It has the important beats to a large degree, and there are some changes to the way that they present RWBY that will.
Yeah. It has her being a little shonen pro tag, kicking the crap out of some bad guys, being all heroic and whatnot.
They have her be a very typical shonen pro tag. Like she has a comment about just being an ordinary student, which is much more traditional shonen manga protagonist speak than what we get from her originally.
She's much more quippy in this. She's got a bit of the Joss Whedons about her.
The big thing about RWBY that is the thing that sold me on the series, honestly, the thing that sold me on all of RWBY, because the trailers are cool, right? Like, no denying that. But the thing that sold me on RWBY as a series, because obviously, like, if it's just a bunch of fight scenes, I'll watch a compilation. I don't really care that much. But no, RWBY is all about its characters, and specifically, and this is the big difference between it and the manga, RWBY is all about its ensemble cast. It's very good at introducing characters and making you fucking adore them immediately. They are all filled to the brim with such extremely charming personalities. And the thing that sells you on that initially, and the point where it's like, I'm going to show you the first episode of RWBY, and if it does not hook you in the first like 90-ish seconds, then this is just not something you will ever enjoy. And in all honesty, most people get hooked, but the introduction for RWBY is just so cool and so charming.
It's also extremely funny.
One of the robbers goes up to RWBY and she has headphones on and she's listening, funnily enough, to the OP of the show, which is always an amusing little moment there. And he taps her on the shoulder.
It's got a certain degree of what in the nine hells is going on with the fourth wall in this case, but
honestly, This Will Be the Day does sound like the kind of song that would exist in Remnant, considering.
Yeah.
I could see Faunus liking that song a lot, but we'll get into that later. But she takes off the headset.
That is a White Fang anthem.
I mean, it kind of could be. But like she takes the headset off. Yes, the guy is like trying to get her to be a proper hostage in the situation. And
are you robbing me?
Yes.
Oh.
And then she kicks him through a window. There's a level of, you don't get her awkwardness, you don't get her like social inadequacies, but at her core, this is who RWBY is. This is a situation. I'm gonna deal with this with a smile because this is fun and they have no idea who they're dealing with. Like that is a core essence of RWBY. One thing that is very clear, and in all honesty, this version of RWBY as a contrast really highlights one thing that RWBY is never unconfident about is her abilities as a combatant and her ability to basically achieve her dream of being a huntress. She's never in doubt about the idea of being a huntress. It's, will she be the fairy tale hero that she wants to be? And there's a lot of associations with, like, she associates her ideal of heroism with her mother, and her mother's defining character trait is death. So that's the reason why she's
Her
so
mother-
reckless, because she has a martyr complex, etc.,
Her mother's
etc.
defining trait of being fucking dead.
So it's like there's a lot of elements of this is going to be basically all comparisons to the original series, by the way, just so you know. But not to go too deeply.
I could not stop him if I tried.
Honestly, it's the most interesting thing because this is a relatively generic shonen manga without the comparisons to the original. And quite frankly, I wish it did more with the changes it made, as we're going to see. But this RWBY exists in contrast to the original in a really interesting way, as it illustrates the fact that RWBY is never concerned with the idea of succeeding in her at least stated primary goal. That goes without saying. She knows she's good enough. This RWBY is a more standard shonen protagonist in that
she's got all the confidence, but
she has a surface level of confidence, but it's skin deep. Yeah,
it's a facade. She's got the usual shonen protag thing of, I don't know if I can actually do it, but I need to try. It's my dream.
Yeah. And that is like the major character trait of this version of RWBY, in that she is a more standard shonen protagonist. I will also say they also make Torchwick a lot more menacing because he doesn't need Cinder to save him at the end.
I really like what they did with Torchwick, because in the show,
I like most of what they did with Torchwick. There's one moment where I am going to have some words, but we'll get there.
I think I know the one you're talking about. Well, we will in fact get there. But in the show, Torchwick is sort of like a smug, the Penguin type, because both Matt and Kane.
He's a gentleman thief, is what he is, and
he's a lot more smug, sort of modern day thief. Like, he kind of feels like a New York gangster with a gimmick. But
I mean, he would work as a Batman villain, like, not for nothing.
Exactly. In this, he's way more theatrical
and more menacing too.
Yeah, it's to good menacing effect.
Yeah, he really does kind of double down on being like he doubles down on being the BBEG to the point where I wonder if the manga knew Cinder existed. Because Torchwick's whole thing is that he is following other stronger people so that they don't kill him. Like, it's like, they pay me, and if I do what they want, they won't kill me. That is Torchwick's entire thing, all the way down. And one of the things that makes Torchwick one of the good early villains is because he leverages that simplicity into being a solid, consistent character. Just to like give a little bit more detail, a lot of the big capital V villains of RWBY can sometimes be a little bit like they'll have issues, like they're one-dimensional. There's a little bit too much tell and not enough show. Adam, dear God, I hate Adam so much.
Jake.
Right, Adam's not here. Thank goodness. But it's like Torchwick is in a lot of ways, Torchwick is a interesting foil to RWBY because they both wear their hearts on their sleeves. They're both exactly who they present themselves to be. There's no artifice. There's no deeper layer. And it's like, obviously there is more to RWBY than her bubbly personality, but like that stuff is like her subconscious. That's buried deeper. And Torchwick works because he's just who he is. Like, he's just who he is on the surface. And it is, and like, making him more menacing doesn't really harm that, but it is a weird change because Torchwick is so much scarier in this. Like, the idea that this guy has been evading not just the police, but a bunch of huntsmen and huntresses too, who are like higher ranked than the police. It actually almost makes more sense in this context of Torchwick being able to just do that on his own, that he's actually like a major international criminal and not just the local gentleman thief.
The local goober that's being used by the villain behind the villain behind the villain behind the villain.
Right, because like to a large degree,
I think I might have done too many behind the villains, but Jake isn't correcting me, so that makes me worried.
But yeah, it depends on how you count it, basically. In the original story, it's like, how is Torchwick this threatening? He shouldn't be this threatening, and it's a hint that he has a boss. Whereas in this version, I buy that he is this much of a threat. He presents himself as that much of a threat very convincingly.
He's an absolute freaking menace. And we get the whole sequence of him escaping in the helicopter and Glinda showing up to save Ruby from his, you know,
He eats some raw dust at her.
It
Which
basically,
again, it's interesting because in the other version, it was Cinder's maiden powers that Glinda was fighting. Which,
yeah,
like, I guess we're glossing that over.
just a little bit. The point being, Roman does his farewell attack to cover his escape and maybe kill this pest. Glinda fights it off. Here's where we get to one of my pretty major gripes with the manga. Boy, howdy are its action scenes impossible to follow.
Yeah, that's gonna be the art style. It makes for really pretty splash pages, and the character art is pretty freaking gorgeous. But
It's very, very pretty. But wow, they love their like dramatic dust clouds and flowing garments and not having to draw backgrounds by making more billowing dust clouds.
and like it has this like washed out pastel style that fits for the fairy tale this is. It's one of those ones where it's easy to forget sometimes that RWBY ultimately as a series is a fairy tale, and the art style fits with that, but it means that the very dynamic fight scenes that the franchise is known for, because Monty Ohm was a genius choreographer and eventually RWBY did get its groove back after his passing, even if it took a couple of seasons. Those fight scenes just aren't here because like you can do RWBY fights in manga form, but this art style to a large degree clashes with facilitating that. You need much simpler character designs and a much simpler art style to make that work. In the same way that simpler character designs and animation makes it easier to choreograph more dynamic fight scenes. It's the reason why they used video game graphics for RWBY, because not only was Rooster Teeth already familiar with that because of Red versus Blue, obviously, but more so, those rigs are easier to manipulate in a complex dynamic fight scene with complex camera work. In a manga, you have certain limitations, and you can make that work with splash panels, but you need a simpler art style with a lot less like dust and background effects.
Yeah, and this is trying to look like every 2-page like glory splash from Hunter's Guild Red Hood. So
yeah. I mean, to some degree, there's a lot of shared DNA between this manga and Hunter's Guild Red Hood. The big difference is that this has RWBY to piggyback off of to fill in a lot of the blanks.
I legit had to like check and make sure that the mangaka for Red Hood didn't do the art for this or something.
I think the art styles are different enough that I never really thought that, but it's like the sort of vibe of the two of them is very similar. Like, this is a doomed project, so just kind of fucking go for it and see where it goes.
Yep.
I wish that this doubled down on the changes it does make. Because again, one of the big differences here is that RWBY is a very different person than she is in the original series. Unfortunately, later she's going to have some lines of dialogue lifted directly from the series that contradict this alternate characterization of her, which muddies the water a bit. Is this the original RWBY, or is this a different RWBY? Or is it neither? She's kind of neither, unfortunately, because the manga won't commit to this being a different RWBY. But that's actually kind of what we're getting into now. Another character that is vastly different. We are introduced to RWBY's sister.
My favorite character, best girl.
Well, not Cinder, Yang.
Jacob, the audience doesn't know this bit. This is an inside joke. You keep your inside jokes out of the episode.
But I know this bit.
So, best girl Yang is significantly different in this.
She really seems to want to make this an episode of Sis Confidential, and I don't like it.
I didn't realize that the mangaka was an enabler fan, but here we are.
There is a lot of hardcore shipping propaganda in this. There is a lot of filthy White Rose propaganda that I am 100,000% here for.
Yes, Yang is very bubbly. I do enjoy that aspect of the personality, because while it's there in the show, it doesn't come out a bunch. Particularly not in the more recent seasons where, all the trauma
All of
happens.
the darkness happens.
Yeah.
This is actually a really interesting case because, quite frankly, I feel like the people who made this manga probably got one of the original writer's Bibles for the RWBY series, like something maybe directly from Monty Ohm, because I know one bad faith criticism that has been lobbed at this series, because there have been a lot of bad faith criticisms lobbed at this series, is that in interviews, it has been stated that Yang was originally designed to be a bit more of a bubbly party girl type character. And
Mhm.
it was through characterization in the story and the narrative drawing her character away because she had to step in as a maternal figure for RWBY because their mother died. And she has that dynamic of like being the older sibling. In a lot of ways, this almost feels like a Yang who didn't need to do that. Like almost like Summer died later in this timeline or something. I don't know. This is more like a Yang who never had that maternal trauma and never
Mhm.
had to step up and be a a feminine authority figure for her sister.
Which is it's interesting, and it's a fun sort of AU idea that I do enjoy right up until
Until almost all of Yang's interactions with Ruby end with a glomp sound effect and hearts coming off of her head and calling her some flavor of scrumptiously cute, which like don't, please stop. Yang, we do not want this to be an episode of Sis Confidential. Please stop. I know you flirt with everybody like that, but not your sister. You're normal in the original series. Enabler is like one of the very few ships that doesn't actually work in the original show. Almost every ship has actual like evidence for it except for this one, and that's good.
I will be so much happier when Blake shows up on screen and can and can take this energy away from Ruby.
Uh, Frankly, Weiss too, but
Yes, yes. There while this is white roast propaganda, and there's a lot of Bumblebee too, which makes me happy. There's also some Freeburn and Monochrome, and it's
and Ladybug. Like honestly, this is totally fine with all of the Team Ruby ships.
God audience, I hope you're familiar with these fandom terms.
If you're listening to this, you probably are.
They're self-explanatory enough. They're red, white, black, and yellow. You can put two and two together. I believe in you.
Uh, the other kind of interesting thing that the manga does is it rearranges scenes a little bit
Mhm.
because in the context of the original story you have Ruby meeting Ozpin immediately, but in this version it skips from Glinda saving Ruby to the airship taking them to Beacon, and then it
And then
flashes back to that meeting, which again kind of reinforces the element of Ruby being a more typical shonen protagonist because then we get two-person dialogue between Ruby and Ozpin. And the really interesting thing is there's no mention of her
no
silver
mention of this.
eyes.
I noticed that too. No mention of that.
There's no mention of the silver eyes. It's all entirely about her dream and why she has it. And again, there is a level of the motivations for the two Rubies are different, where this Ruby is more, I want to be a hero because it's the right thing and I'm compelled to that, which is a sort of typical, like generic washerboard shonen protagonist thing. Whereas Ruby's motivation isn't really questioned in the original series because we're more focused on the other characters in the ensemble cast. Another big change here is that this series has Ruby definitively as the protagonist, like specifically, and focuses on her until it suddenly becomes Blake. We'll get to that.
Mhm.
But it's like it focuses way more hard on Ruby specifically to the exclusion of the ensemble cast. And quite frankly, that's not a bad choice. It makes it
Yeah,
feel different, and an adaptation should feel different enough that that someone who knows it should get a bit of a different experience out of it.
and I did enjoy this version of Ruby. I'm with you on kind of wishing that they stuck to their guns a little bit more. Um,
It's actually right here the thing that ticks me off the most is they have the exchange from the beginning of when they first land on
Mhm.
they first get off the airship.
At Beacon Academy, and Ruby is busy fangirling over all the cool weapons.
Her fangirling over the weapons is fine, but the part I don't like is that she mentions that she left behind her friends at Signal. I kind of don't want this version of Ruby to have friends.
Wow, Jake, I know you love torturing characters.
Well, no, because there's a very specific reason for this. because of the way that they design RWBY as a character in contrast to her original form, she is made to be much more of a direct foil to Weiss. And having them both be people who are isolated, who find each other, is a really strong alternate take on their relationship that I feel is a path worth exploring, a really interesting direction to take these familiar characters and have something that is still recognizably RWBY, but is different enough that it's still interesting. But the fact is, they just lift scenes and dialogue from the original story to the point where it makes this new version of RWBY feel wishy-washy and incomplete from a metacontextual perspective, not from a character perspective. And again, it's little things like mentioning losing her, not being able to graduate with her friends from Signal that sort of reinforce that it makes sense that original RWBY would have friends because despite her social awkwardness, she is deeply confident. So like anyone who she's a peer with, anyone else who's into combat is going to have a connection with her and she's going to be able to talk to them. Whereas this version of RWBY, there's a disconnect there where she's not confident in her fighting ability. She has nothing to like make that initial connection. And that isolates her in the way that it isolates her like Weiss, but in a different way, because Weiss is isolated for the same reasons, is that she's an heiress of an incredibly controversial and rightly loathed man. So her name is both her name is a gilded curse.
I am not going to talk about Jacques Chenet because we do not have all night.
Jacques. You haven't even seen the end of Jacques.
No, I haven't. The biggest dynamic change that that stood out to me at least, which is the change in the dynamic between RWBY and Weiss.
Oh yeah, this is completely different.
Yep, because we have Yanni's like, RWBY, go make friends, and
runs off as she does. Like that's all exactly the same. We even get poor Jean Vomit Boy. We'll get to Team Juniper in a bit.
Poor Jean. But RWBY runs face first into Weiss, making her spill everything. She's like, you idiot, I'm basically carrying nitroglycerin. Be more careful where you're going. I'm sorry. You think this sorry is fucking good enough? Do you know who I am? Do you know who my father is? You're just an idiot child. Wait a minute. You are way too young. Why are you even here? You are some unrefined little brat. And okay, I said sorry. And it just turns into a shouting match between the two of them.
Yeah, RWBY is way, way, way more willing to...
way more aggro.
Willing to, like, confront Weiss on, like... her attitude, because like the thing is, and this again sort of like delves into the idea of like the different goals of the manga versus the original story. In the original story, their exchange is actually very fast, and that's the reason why RWBY doesn't say anything, because like she tries to apologize but can't quite manage it because Weiss shakes a bunch of dust at her face, causing her to sneeze, and they almost get blown off the mountain. Ha ha ha. It's a funny joke that gets called back to later. But like the other thing is, the closest she comes to an apology is saying, I said I was sorry, princess, which is actually meant to be Blake's introduction. This scene exists to introduce Blake in the original story, because then she comes in with its heiress actually, and then she's the one who gives Weiss a verbal lashing. But in this version, it is very explicitly clear what the two of them are like what their dynamic is supposed to be. It's Naruto and Sasuke. It's the classic deuteragonist rival character who exists to be the powerful, already seemingly fully established, but not quite, stronger version of the main character that puts them down and drives them to be better. Which is also why there's a lot of White Rose shipping in this, because that dynamic is inherently like it has an inherent tension that can be very easily read as sexual. And that will be played into beautifully later. There are parts of this manga I really like. But with that said, it's very clear that this scene exists to further establish RWBY as the underdog, as someone who is incomplete as a fighter, as a huntress, as a
character, as like a person.
Yeah. Whereas Weiss is the one who is put together, but is brittle, which incidentally, Weiss
she is put together because it's all a facade.
Yeah, she is she is more put together, but she's very brittle, which quite frankly, Weiss is maybe the most similar character. Like, it's either Weiss or Blake, depending on what parts of those characters you feel is more important to who they are. Um, but Weiss is very similar, but she reacts to RWBY in very different ways because RWBY is so dramatically different. The fact that she is so willing to, because it's like and this will come up later when we get to initiation, but there is a level of RWBY never wants conflict with Weiss. She will actually shrink away from conflict with Weiss and let Weiss get away with things she quite frankly shouldn't in the original story. And that sort of creates their like old married couple dynamic, whereas this is way more like shonen protag versus shonen rival sort of dynamic, and RWBY is way more reticent to tell Weiss exactly how she feels, which again, it makes RWBY feel more like Weiss as a character. Again, this is why I made the comment about I wish she didn't have the same line of dialogue she has from the show about leaving her friends at Signal behind. They have similar tendencies. The way that RWBY flies off the handle at Weiss is the way that Weiss just flew off the handle at her. They're foils of each other. Like there is a level of them being foils in the original series, but they're not direct foils. Here, they are direct foils. These are the
very
two
intentional.
main characters of the story, and their contrast is the primary focus until Blake becomes the main character. We'll get to that.
Yeah, and that's why I say that this definitely looked at the early installment weirdness and also kind of the fan response of these bitches gay, good for them. And is leaning into it because we have the immediate establishment of the Naruto and Sasuke, the White Rose dynamic going on here, and then with the significant changes in Yang and more subtle changes in Blake, they're very red Oni, blue Oni.
Yeah, they honestly a lot of Yang and Blake is just doubling down on their surface level personality to the detriment of their depth. But again, that isn't necessarily the worst thing in the world because their surface level personalities are fun and charming when they're not doing an Abler. Ugh.
Yes.
But that aside, their surface level personalities are still interesting and charming. So it works if you're going to laser focus on RWBY as the main character. It is the kind of thing that's an adaptational change that it's like if Blake is somebody's favorite character, or if Yang is somebody's favorite character, they might have a problem with that. But it creates a different enough dynamic that it's still interesting to experience the story despite having seen it 1,000 times.
Yeah, I get the feeling if this continued further along enough, I would grow agitated with this version of Yang if they
they would have to tone her down by a lot.
But they might have to cut her down to size.
Oh, that's evil. That's not even nice.
But while RWBY and Weiss might have more of an Naruto Sasuke dynamic, oh boy, guess who is actually acting like Sasuke? Hi, Blake.
Yeah, Blake is technically introduced here.
She is so the rogue hiding in the corner.
Don't talk to me about my tragic backstory.
What about your tragic backstory? Shut up.
Well, if you insist.
Yeah, real good job hiding the fact that you're a faunus. Definitely people who aren't cat people pose like that.
I will freely admit I'm with Team RWBY on not noticing Blake being a faunus thing. Mostly because it's funny in the manga, the ear twitch that's supposed to tip you off is way more obvious. I watched episode 8 like 30 times and I never noticed it until it was pointed out to me, but we're not quite there yet. Or maybe it's episode 7 where I think it's 8. It doesn't matter.
It's one of them. The point is, Jean, bless his heart, tries to be a part of this manga, and...
Yeah, and this is the part where if you're going to focus so heavily on RWBY, what is Team Juniper even doing here? This is going to get worse later, and I want to make something clear. Pyrrha and Nora are best girls. They are tied for the best character in this series. I fucking love them. Team Juniper should not be in this manga. They do nothing. They provide nothing. The only thing that is a missing component from the story is later on Pyrrha's explanation of aura for the audience would be missing without Jean. And I don't know how you get that information into the story without a direct info dump. Now, I will say, I don't think they should be deleted from the narrative completely, but they should not be in this section of the manga. They should be introduced later. And I can tell you how I feel they should be introduced later. But the fact that they have, it's specifically, they just have Jean and Pyrrha as being around. And they have all of their they have most of their scenes from the original story, but everything else about Team Juniper is cut. And even some of the sections that are kind of critical for Team Juniper also get cut too, to varying degrees of severity. And it's like, if you're gonna focus that heavily on RWBY specifically, let it be RWBY's story. Team Juniper exists as part of an ensemble cast of like, the thing that's cool about RWBY is that it has this cast of thousands, and it's like, because all of the characters are so well performed, they have such personality, they're so charming, you can understand both who they are, their quirks, and their deeper levels in just a couple of lines of dialogue. It allows that series to have a massive roster of favorite characters. This manga is not doing that. This manga is so focused that it leaves out a lot of what makes that ensemble work.
Jean is just kind of here, and that I'm not going to dwell on it any longer.
I hate saying cut Pyrrha and Nora because they're the best characters ever, but Pyrrha never apologizes in this. I just realized.
Oh my god, you're right.
Feels like a crime.
Anyway, we have Oz giving some base level exposition about the Grimm, and then we have the scene with everybody in their
The
pajamas.
big sleepover. And again, this is another case where it's like, boy, do they really double down on like this different version of RWBY, because like, she has a Shonen Protag speech. Like, that's literally what this scene is. You know, like, the scene is supposed to be
We
like
have the whole dramatic close up with the big shining eyes, and
yeah, and it's like, in the original story, the point of this scene is to establish the dynamic between the four of them. You know, it's like Yang is almost a bit player in this, despite how many lines of dialogue she has. She's an almost non-presence, and Blake is basically not in the scene at all. Like, she's just sitting off to the side. When, to a large degree, as much as Blake already had an introduction, this was supposed to be like the establishment of who she is as a character, because of how she reacts to RWBY's motivations in the original series of specifically not just wanting to be a huntress, but wanting to be a fairy tale hero. And it's like, she like, you know, she does say she wants to save people, like in storybooks in here too, but it's like, it's so much more about like just being a huntress in general. And you don't really get like you get a bit of token reaction of, but real life isn't like a storybook, but like that sort of like ideological conflict isn't there. And it's honestly, it's just more heavy focus on RWBY and who she is and what her motivations are. You know, it's like, to the relative exclusion of the ensemble cast.
which probably best for a manga.
Yeah, no, like, this isn't necessarily a complaint either. Like, the reason why it frustrates me is because they don't commit to it. They're too reticent to grab scenes directly, scenes and characters. Because, like, again, Juniper provides nothing. You can cut them to more focus on the main character. You know, and then just because of the nature of, you don't have the voice acting talents in a manga, the physical acting of the animators has a large degree of personality to it. That is, it's conveyed differently in a manga. It's not impossible to convey that in a manga, but it's conveyed differently. So it's like, changing the dynamic, that's a reasonable thing to do. But if you do that, you better commit to it whole hog. If you're not just going to like, just do screenshots if you're really gonna like lift things that directly. You know, and it's like, to a large degree, I'm glad they didn't, because like, this is an alternate take on the RWBY story. Makes me think about how the story could develop if it had been properly gone for, especially with later stuff. Like, any of you who are caught up with the series up to season 9, imagine this version of RWBY in season 9. Oh, you know, it's like, maybe she'd be better because she would have broken sooner, because this RWBY is significantly more fragile. You know, imagine the spooky cabin with this version of RWBY that is so much more fragile. But unfortunately, this next section going into initiation is literally just lifted directly from, like, they basically just
Yep.
cut Ren and Nora's part out of the episode where this happens, down to mentioning Pyrrha being on the pumpkin Pete packaging.
Mm-hmm. Yep, they go ahead and they all line up on the big cliff, and it's like, all right, you're gonna go into the woods, you're gonna get a relic from the temple, and you're gonna make your way back here. And the first person you lock eyes with is your partner. Good luck getting down. What do you mean getting down?
Yeah, so this mostly focuses on Jean. Like at first, it focuses on Jean, as it does in the original, where it's like, "What do you mean landing strategy?" They don't say landing strategy in this version, but it's the same bit basically. But the big difference is actually once they land. This is the thing where it's like, it's so bonkers to me how different this version of RWBY is, because she talks about nearly failing and dying in the landing.
Mm-hmm.
That is not the original Ruby Rose. This is a completely different character. She should not have a problem with it. Like if it was the original, she should not have a problem with this. I am okay with this less competent version of RWBY because it's a different medium telling a slightly different story. But my God, it's so different. And then the other big change, and this is the part that I find really interesting, and this is the part that like made me really hopeful that I'd really super like this and be into this, is when Ruby and Weiss initially lock eyes.
When they have their meet cute.
So it's like Ruby is initially lamenting as she's falling, I gotta find Yang. Yang's gotta be my partner. She's the only person I can talk to. When she lands, she's complaining about having screwed it up and almost died. And then she locks eyes with Weiss. And Weiss does what she does in the original story. She just turns on her heel and walks away.
Mm-hmm.
But Ruby doesn't follow. And that's kind of a big deal. Because the original version of RWBY is immediately, wait, come back, we're supposed to be partners. She wants to be, she accepts,
wants to be partners with Weiss.
Because it's like, okay, this is a person I have spoken to. I can handle this. And then she wants that like personal connection. This version, she's in the shadows of foliage and just reasons that didn't count because Weiss must not have seen me, which is Weiss's reasoning for not wanting to partner up with Ruby. But like the fact that Ruby like tries to take that out makes her a way more isolated and less friendly character than her original version. And that version of Ruby interacting with the story would actually make some pretty big changes down the road. Unfortunately, again, it's not as transformative as I'd like, because this is more of an isolated scene.
Yeah, we can't actually go ahead and change the dynamic. There's a bit where we have to wooby Jean some more because we can never not wooby him enough.
Sometimes he deserves it. Early on, he deserves it.
Yeah. But a Grimm goes and tries to attack Weiss. She fights it off. It's a fairly even one-on-one. But then who should appear but RWBY? Very cool 2-page splash panel there.
Because Weiss is about to get jumped by a second Grimm that RWBY takes down. The Grimm also don't look good in this manga, I'm not gonna lie.
Nah, they're kinda extremely generic.
The art style doesn't really do good things for them.
Now that their partnership has been forged in fire, they go to team up on the horde of Grimm.
And it is even more protag and deuteragonist. Like it is so hardcore generic protag with generic deuteragonist. Like honestly,
I can't have you slowing me down. Don't steal my lines, princess.
And like it's one of those ones where it's like, obviously because of my age, Naruto and Sasuke is the obvious one that comes to my mind. But like it is so much the like standard shonen like character layering that exists circa the way these mangas usually work. Like this feels like a manga version of RWBY, like even more so than just it is literally a RWBY manga. Like because it's like if you literally did just take screenshots from the actual show and literally translate it one to one, it would not feel like a manga. It would feel RWBY. It would feel like a sort of American web series anime hybrid blend thing that it is. This feels so manga in the way that it sets up its character dynamics.
It is extremely manga.
The same applies even for Yang and Blake and for Jean and Pyrrha, who we focus on next. Incidentally, they use Yang and Blake as the example of aura when Pyrrha is unlocking Jean's aura, because that scene still happens exactly the same.
Mm-hmm.
And they use Yang and Blake instead of Ren and Nora because Ren and Nora don't do anything in this. They basically aren't characters.
They show up.
Nora instigates the food fight. That is all she does. We'll get to it.
They show up to round out Team Juniper, and that is literally it.
Honestly, this is why I feel like I wish these characters were introduced after Initiation, and Initiation was just Team RWBY.
Mm-hmm.
Because quite frankly, Team Juniper doesn't even do anything that's required for the story, because Deathstalker, Nevermore, they're separated fights anyway, as we'll get to. But yeah, the big thing here is that, and the reason why I think Jean and Pyrrha were left in basically completely unchanged was because this is the audience's introduction to Aura, and I don't know how you do that without Jean not having an aura and having it get unlocked by Pyrrha.
Mm-hmm.
Other than just an exposition dump, which I mean, quite frankly, you could do.
Yeah.
It's a choice, and it's one that I'm not a fan of.
I feel like there's ways you could have done it with Ruby and Weiss fighting the Ursa.
Yeah, like Weiss being like, "Don't you know about this?" and Ruby saying, "Yes, I know about this," and then them sharing the exposition.
Or like, we've already got a narrator. We haven't mentioned it, but like there is a nameless narration box.
Yeah, that mentions that this is a story, this is a fairy tale about 4 girls, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
Boy, even the narration kicks out Team Juniper like the manga should have.
We have more delicious White Rose propaganda.
They're in full Sin mode right now.
Yes.
We move along relatively quickly because it's not long after that we do finally get our...
I realized I had lost my place. Because, oh right, the delicious Bumblebee propaganda that opens up chapter 3. where Yang is done beating the shit out of a bunch of Grimm and is like, yes, more blood.
Who's the bloodthirsty monster? Flattery will get you nowhere, Heart, in the speech bubble. It is sort of funny because,
God,
quite frankly, it is funny because, quite frankly, the thing that sold Bumblebee to me initially when I was first watching RWBY was way more Blake than Yang, because and it was almost all body language, which really does make me wonder how spontaneous Bumblebee actually was. The tagline was that Barbara Dunkelman and I forget Blake's VA. I wish I remembered the main 4's VAs, but the two of them shipped their characters really freaking hard and were like heavily pressuring the development team at all levels, because they're, it's like the guy who plays Jean is also is the head writer of the series, and incidentally Monty Ohm voiced Ren, so it's like obvious it was very tight knit, because it was Rooster Teeth. It was a bunch of friends working together making really good online stuff that ended up being absurdly successful until stuff happened. But yeah, a lot of it was like in Blake's body language, or just the way that she look at Yang and hold herself around Yang, that like really sold the Bumblebee ship more so than Yang being overtly flirty. Because like Yang is mostly flirty with her enemies before she beats them up. Like most of that aspect of Yang's personality is basically a combat bit. Whereas in this version, she's just a bubbly party girl. Like she is what she pretends to be in this version to a large degree. But yeah, as we establish the various pairs going forward, this is where we finally get to meet. It's the same introduction. It's the same thing Nora does.
Literally the same introduction. She's just riding in on
It's broken.
Poor, long-suffering Ren.
Ren and Nora are two people with the energy of two human beings, except Nora has 100% of the energy and Ren has 0% of the energy.
Yep. We also have a joke that I really did like, where after Ruby and Weiss get yeeted by the Nevermore, and are about to crash down at the temple, Ruby's like, "All right, cool. I'm gonna stick the cool landing this time," and incoming Jean, knocking her
It
right
is
out of the sky.
it is very funny, and this is another case where it's like this is really like doubling down. Like this is a case where it is actually doubling down on the changes it made with Ruby not being able to, because it's like Ruby should have been able to be like she shouldn't have even questioned her ability to land,
Mhm.
but it's like in this version she's the underdog shonen protagonist, so she's got to fail a lot. She's always got to be failing until the critical moment where she pulls it together and does the cool thing.
Yes, it is. It's extremely fun. We have our delicious White Rose propaganda with the appearance of the Death Stalker.
This is the most White Rose it gets by a long shot. Like this is
Oh yeah,
basically just straight up White Rose fan fiction, and I am all here for it.
I am extremely about it.
Because like the thing is, and it's actually it's kind of same but kind of different, where it's the Deathstalker shows up, and honestly the Grimm seem more powerful in this.
Mm,
Or at the very least, the main characters seem weaker, I think is probably the better way of putting it. Particularly Ruby, Yang, and Team Juniper are like noticeably weaker than they are in the show. And Blake and Weiss are mostly on par with where they are in the show. So it's like the Deathstalker is okay, we all need to leave now. And Ruby does a whole like heroic thing of I'll hold it off.
I'll hold it off, and you guys run away.
The
And
number of times Ruby notes that she's definitely done for in this is really crazy, because like that's not even a thought that would occur in
yeah,
show Ruby's head, because death
you're
is
not.
not an obstacle for her. She's willing to die for the cause.
Yeah, it's like Ruby. Your martyr complex is supposed to come from the fact that you're. It's weird. It's a
She associates heroism with her mother, and her mother's defining character trait is death.
is being dead. Yes, and so
Is
like
specifically dying on a mission too.
yeah, so, flinging herself into a thing where she's obviously going to die is very appropriate for that dynamic. But then it's just like, well, I'm dead.
She seems almost surprised by it.
Hmm. It it's more, did you throw yourself in here to die heroically, or did you actually just completely overestimate your capabilities and are honestly shocked that the consensus will now quench?
Yeah, and like again, that's much more of a shonen protag thing. Is the latter, and it 100% feels like that's what the case is. Like I don't feel like this Ruby has as much. Like again, like I almost feel like in this manga, Summer isn't dead. Like it's really weird.
Yeah. Honestly, that would be the twist of all time.
That would be cool. An alternate timeline where Summer isn't dead. Like, because that would also explain why Osmond doesn't care about Ruby's silver eyes, because Summer would still be on his payroll, and we know
Hmm.
she's silver-eyed.
But before Ruby can get impaled on the scorpion stinger, Weiss steps in and freezes it solid. And here we have our our amazing White Rose propaganda. God, I love this.
It's like, because it's like it's leveraging this different dynamic to basically just the Dare part of the tsundere dynamic that they have.
Mhm.
Like Weiss is always a tsundere. Like Weiss is like okay, whatever your opinions are, and like I know what the VA has said, and God, I hope she's trolling, because they're all trolls. Barbara is just the biggest troll. But like Weiss is always a tsundere, whether it's as a friendship tsundere or a romantic tsundere.
Mhm.
um that is just her natural dynamic, but like because Ruby is in this version a character that's sort of like more receptive to that kind of thing, because she's a more typical shonen protag who's more willing to just say the quiet part out loud and not be nice to Weiss basically.
Mm-hmm.
and like just accuse her of dareing. It's like she full on blushes when Ruby smiles at her. Like it's one of those ones where I know what you're doing
I know what you're doing,
and I'm here
and I'm
for it.
super for it. It's like Weiss being all cool, like we're still a team, aren't we? She's picking Ruby up off the ground, and then Ruby getting in really close, like why are you getting so close to me? Making sure you're not an imposter because you're such a nice-hearted bitch that I can't believe you'd actually you'd actually step in to save me. Thanks, Weiss.
And it's like she phrases it nicer than that, but that's basically what it is.
Uh-huh.
And Weiss dares really freaking hard. If it is going to happen in the show, that's the reason why because it's like their dynamic is comfortable, so neither of them is going to unsettle it.
The team has their MacGuffins, so it's like, all right, let's just get out of here. Oh, crap. Despite being frozen in a massive block of ice, the Deathstalker isn't actually defeated. We should just go. Right, guys? We should go. We're all going to go. And then Ruby's like, no, wait, but the bad guy, we have to finish the bad guy. Why do we have to finish the bad guy? Because if it's still here, it'll probably kill somebody. You just want to fight the bad guy, don't you? No. Yes.
I mean, I really do kind of just buy what Ruby says.
I'm taking the piss, but it is very sincere. Ruby has the entire like hand to heart like soulful expression. It will hurt others if we don't defeat it. Like she
More Weiss or White Rose propaganda from Weiss, like overtly like reacting to that.
Yeah, it they are leaning into it hard, and naturally, right as everyone is resolved to go and finish off the Deathstalker, the Nevermore shows up, and well, yeah, the Grimm don't look great in this. Oh boy, the Nevermore is threatening.
Yeah, the Nevermore look is honestly the one that look the Deathstalker and the Nevermore look the best. The Deathstalker looks passable, and then the Nevermore actually genuinely looks good.
It is freaking massive. I know there's some forced perspective at play, but it's still also just freaking massive.
It looks massive, and it leverages the art style in a way that actually benefits the character design as opposed to the other Grimm, which are just kind of blobs. I mean, one of the big things about the Grimm is they're threatening and they're good antagonists because they're unknowable soulless death monsters, but they do have like an air of familiarity to them that gives them a bit of an uncanny vibe. They're wolves or they're bears or they're, birds or scorpions or elephants, but it's like they're not quite those things. It's like they're like skeletal and they have this like black flesh to them. They're not as defined as they are in the manga. Like the manga has them be a bit more amorphous just because that fits the art style. But like it's a choice based off of the art style. And it's not even necessarily a wrong one, but it does diminish the Grimm. Again, somewhat elevating the protagonist as being the focus of the story. Like even down to like making Torchwick more threatening or the Grimm less of a like major factor, because honestly, the Nevermore and the Deathstalker are really the only serious Grimm in this story, like as far as we read.
Yeah, the Grimm barely come up otherwise.
It is all in service of funneling into the protagonist being the centerpiece of the story. We do get Team Juniper saying that they'll fight the Deathstalker, which then proceeds to happen off page. Which again, why are they here? Why did you include them? They provided nothing. Again, the explanation for Aura is the only thing that any member of Team Juniper has done for this entire story.
They are here to fight the Deathstalker.
The Deathstalker doesn't need to exist.
But then how would we get the White Rose propaganda? How would we get the
Nevermore?
Shut up.
The Nevermore can just do that.
I know.
Oh, really is my biggest complaint about the manga is that it makes enough changes to be different enough to be interesting, but it doesn't make certain changes that it should because of that.
We get so the Deathstalker fight happens off screen. We get the battle with the Nevermore,
which is actually quite different. In some ways, I think there is a level of there are certain elements of both versions of the fight because this is actually a really good fight, and it goes into and focuses on what the manga wants to. There is a level of I feel the way that they defeat the Nevermore in the manga fits the I almost called it an anime. It's not really an anime. Fits the show better, whereas the way that the show defeats the Nevermore actually fits the manga better, which is weird. I don't know that I would transplant them just because of the nature of it, but like fighting the Nevermore, like they have a lot more trouble with it, because like the big thing is in the show, like they have trouble damaging the Nevermore, but like they feel in control. Like they don't feel threatened. Because we know how aura works, and this is something that the show will get into more over the course of its run, but it's like because of how the aura works, they're never really under immediate threat of the Nevermore killing them. It has to hit them a lot and really hard for them to actually be damaged by it, but they can't really do anything to it either, and it doesn't tire out, which is their concern, which then RWBY proceeds to come up with the fastball special, basically, to finish it off. And it is sort of interesting. In the show, it's a combo of mostly RWBY and Weiss. Those two are the main players in taking down the Nevermore, which is what the manga focuses on, just those two, to the exclusion of the other characters, where this version is more of a team effort.
Yeah, it's more of a team effort because RWBY and Weiss can't really get up to the big flying bird monster. They're just shooting at it as it caws at them mockingly.
Or it's RWBY and Yang, because Yang makes the comment. Yang makes the comment about how the Nevermore is laughing at them, which is really funny.
Yeah, that one's a riot.
I will say one moment of, because it's like I gotta complain about every time it's Cis Confidential because it happens too much. But there is also a really funny moment.
It only happened twice so far. Yeah, twice is too much. Once is too much.
Yeah, any number higher than 0 is too much. But like really funny moment of them actually being proper sisters is they both have the same reaction to the Nevermore laughing at them. It's like boy, that is such a sister moment.
But I do like the bit with Weiss and Blake where they're getting ready to go and attack it, and Blake is taking the moment to kind of monologue at Weiss, being the edgy ninja that she is.
She is that D&D rogue in this, and there's not a lot else to her.
Yeah, it's pretty great though. Working together, we get some cool monochrome action as Blake leaps onto the Nevermore. Something about the art style makes her pants not look real. I don't know why. It's particularly bad in this section, but epic battle against the Nevermore as Blake tries desperately to damage it. We get a bit more, or we get the end of the Deathstalker fight where Jean lures it to the edge of a cliff.
They cliff it in this version, which is
a
lot less cool than what they do in the show, but yeah, Juniper doesn't need to be here.
Yeah. So back to the real show, get a brief flashback to how this plan was established, with RWBY being like, all right, cool. With Weiss's sigils, Blake will be able to get up there and actually attack it. And Blake will be able to avoid getting hit by it with her clones. And that means that once you bring it down to ground level, Yang and I will be able to take it out with her damage conversion and my super speed. At which point Weiss goes, wait, how do you know what our semblances are? I saw you use them.
Yeah, this is another one where it's like, boy,
I barely used mine, and when did Blake use hers? When we were squabbling in the courtyard the other day. You saw that?
Yeah, this is anher case of really establishing RWBY as like the classic shonen pro tag. Yeah, because what this is doing is
this is a Goku moment.
Yeah, it's establishing that RWBY, despite her combat inadequacies, has extremely high battle IQ. And that is a very common thing for pro tags to have. It's that, like, it's not that they don't know what to do, it's that they're not physically capable of it yet. And so when the big moment comes, they overcome their limits and are able to actualize the plan that they had all along. And the other big thing is that this exists to create a contrast with Weiss, because this is how the Shonen Pro Tag gets their deuteragonists to respect them so that they have a respectful rivalry moving forward, which again, it was like, this is so manga. Like, this is so aggressively typical shonen manga, because it's like, this is very much not the dynamic in the original story, but it works here, you know. Like,
but I'm kind of here for it.
Yeah, like it still is interesting enough that, like, because I mean, I've watched episode 8 of RWBY front to back more times than I can count, because it is honestly
More
the
times than is
seminal
probably
moment.
healthy.
Yeah, no, it is like the seminal moment of like the series establishing itself and what it wants to be. Incidentally, Red Like Roses isn't blaring yet, because the plan is actually to freeze the Never.
I was listening to it at this point. I jumped the gun.
But yeah, the plan is to freeze the Nevermore to get it to crash into a mountain, but that doesn't work. And it actually establishes something that's I don't think talked about very much in this section in the original story, but the idea that a Grimm that big has to be freaking ancient, and older Grimm are smarter. So now that it realizes that if it gets close, it can get pinned, it starts using ranged attacks by launching its feathers at them like projectiles.
Yeah.
That's a good bit of like world building and establishment that the manga sets up.
They also flex how powerful it is, because they get it into position to freeze it and start walloping on it, and it flexes its wings and breaks out of the ice and also destroys a mountain?
Yeah, like blows the top off of a mountain.
Which I really had trouble following in the sequential art, but sure, I'll take your shocked word for it, Jean. Yeah, you know what? No, that's why Juniper is here, for the shocked peanut gallery. But now's the part where we get to the thing from the show.
This is the Red Like Roses moment. It's sort of funny because the feel of these two is so drastically different. Like, again, it's more of a team effort because they have Yang be the one to launch RWBY. I presume, dear listener, that you know what we're talking about and that I don't have to go into detail about it. It's Yang who launches RWBY in this version instead of just holding the other side of Blake's Kasurigama ribbon thing. But also, the exchange between RWBY and Weiss is more establishing that Weiss has developed a level of respect for RWBY and is like willing to indulge her despite her misgivings about her. Again, this is like this is the deuteragonist like accepting that the protagonist is the protagonist, basically, and like establishing the dynamic that will be moving forward. Whereas in the original, it's more like the rapport between these two characters with a much more complex relationship. I love the way that the two characters speak to each other. It feels like they already have history when, RWBY says,
Think you can make the shot? Can I? Of course I can!
It's like that just has so much personality to it, and like to a large degree, the manga is kind of leaning on the tropes, and it works for that. And it makes for a different dynamic of it's like to some degree I feel like the whole like leadership debacle that happens later wouldn't happen in this version, which maybe is why they are going to skip it in a bit, but we'll talk about that when we get to it. RWBY is proving herself to Weiss in this scene more so than the four of them are coming together as a team.
Indeed. And we get the epic defeat of the Nevermore and the...
She doesn't draw it all the way up the mountain. She just one-shots it.
Yeah, just
I don't know which is cooler.
Straight up decapitation! Okay, the camera work in the show, definitely 1,000% better. But I think the straight-up decapitation is cooler.
Yeah, it fits for this version of RWBY better, I think.
If the show did this particular kill shot, I think it would be peak.
Yeah.
But with the initiation trial over, we have the establishment of our hero team. I mean team. Juniper sure is here, and then
they sure do exist.
Team RWBY, led by Ruby Rose.
And like Weiss looks over at RWBY and smiles and is okay with it. It is so
huge.
Different. Yeah.
Pretty freaking huge change.
Like to a large degree, I really do feel like it is because RWBY is more like Weiss, and they have a more personal, more like intimate connection in this version. Like Weiss is okay with who Ruby is because she sees herself in Ruby.
Mhm.
And then more enabler happens and I'm not okay with it.
More enabler happens, more glomping, more squeeing from Yang, which
Yang, please stop.
please, if you're gonna glomp and squee, please do not do it to your sister.
Do it to literally anybody else.
Yes. And it was literally at this point where I went, oh, we haven't seen Cinder yet. Turn page. Oh, hi, Cinder. Oh, no, wait, it's not here.
No. Cinder still hasn't shown up yet because we turned the page to an incredibly threatening Roman Torchwick who is creepier and scarier than
he has
he
any
has
right,
any
to,
right
be.
to be.
But with that, our dynamic is not fully established, but it's beginning, and I think this is a good place for us to take a quick break.
Indeed.
So we'll be right back. And welcome back to the show, folks, where last we left our huntresses in training. Team RWBY has just been established.
And now the manga's gonna go precipitously downhill. Yay.
No, Jake, it's time for it's time for some slice of life to establish the dynamic amongst our heroes, right?
Sure would have loved to see that. Okay, so here's the thing. This is actually the perfect place to insert Juniper. We are going to go immediately into the Blake is a Faunus former White Fang member plot arc. Like, we are dovetailing into that immediately, no preamble.
Mm-hmm.
There has not been an establishment of a dynamic of a status quo for Team RWBY. There is a line of dialogue about Ruby needing multiple days worth of notes from Weiss and a little like preamble to the first chapter of the second volume. So they have been a team for a little while. They've been together for a while. And it's like at this point, like Ruby and Weiss have their old married couple dynamic that they have from the original series, you know, and like there's even a cute moment of Blake being like, I'm pretty sure they enjoy it. Let's just leave them be.
Yeah, I did really enjoy that.
But the problem is we have not seen their dynamic. The only thing we could infer about their dynamic is if we know the actual original show. This is the kind of shovelware bullshit that you hate because this should be able to stand on its own. Now, because the characters are so different, because the dynamics are so different, have stuff here. This is where you can insert Juniper. Frankly, this is where you can insert the aura stuff if you really didn't want to just have that be a narration block. Because they don't have a lot of narration. Like usually it's just like brief little snippets, and then otherwise it's a character explaining something about the world in a like either in a class or in an as you know kind of way, and they'll just have the narration boxes there, you know, sort of like establishing that they're like saying something that is true about the world.
Yeah, like this actually would have been a good place for that because like it could have been I hate script doctoring sometimes, but I
love script doctoring. It's why there are certain shows I'm not allowed to watch.
Yeah. I can totally see a chapter where it's like they're having like a basic discussion talking about like aura or something, and Ruby is falling asleep, not paying attention because I already know this. Why do I need to be told this? And then we have the scene of her sleeping through class and needing the notes from Weiss because, oh, actually, no, that was only the first like 5 minutes of class. There was like another 40 minutes that you missed of actually important advanced stuff, you stupid goober.
You dolt.
Yep.
Doesn't call Ruby adult either. And that is also illegal.
Extremely illegal.
But yeah, so okay, so like we have some establishing stuff. I want to get to the meat here. You know, like we get Oobleck. He's here for a little bit. He's funny. I like him.
I keep forgetting that his name is Oobleck, which is even funnier than his actions.
And his actions are also pretty funny. But yeah, we get the establishment of the White Fang here.
I do like the sort of like storybook, like ancient bestiary drawing that they do of the faunus because they look like tieflings.
Yeah, there's not a metaphor there. What do
Yeah,
you mean?
like the clawed hands, the webbed feet, the horns. They
And it's like
look,
these are all different faunus
yeah,
is the thing.
yeah, like they look demonic and monstrous. What do you mean racist propaganda? What do you mean the majority of them are just like Neko Mimi?
But yeah, we get talk of the faunus, we get talk of the White Fang and what they are and what they've become. And then
We just get told on page they're a terrorist organization.
saying quiet part out loud. Though to
Mhm.
be fair, it is also true.
And also to be fair, they make an attempt at saying, oh, they used to be like a peaceful activist organization, but then some fractiousness occurred, and then
Yeah, no, it's Pyrrha telling this, so she does give the
yeah,
whole like history of the organization and does equally weight the good that they used to do compared
mhm,
to the bad that they do now.
yeah.
And there is a level of more extreme measures were taken and it's gotten extreme results, et cetera, et cetera. Like it establishes the White Fang well enough. Then we go into Weiss geeking out over the Vital Festival, which is kind of standard.
It's also extremely funny to have Ruby have a self-aware moment of like, is this what it's like hanging out with me? No, you're worse.
What do you mean? Uh, but there is a
Which
just
it's Yang that says that. That's obvious like big sibling teasing, but it's also
yeah.
very funny.
It's very funny, and it's them actually acting like they should around each other. But yeah, there's another dust shop robbery, and we get friction between Blake and Weiss, and like again, this is why there should have been more stuff because. And okay, here's another thing that I wanted to talk about that's really freaking important because Blake is not that one edgy D&D rogue. That's not who she is. Because when we actually spend time interacting with her in the original series, we see a goofier, quirkier, more charming side to her. And it's like as a side character, that D&D rogue is a fine enough character, but like what's going to happen over the course of the next couple of like the next 2 or 3 chapters, the degree to which Blake wants to stay with Team RWBY and the degree to which Team RWBY wants to get Blake back does not make sense because in the original
We have
story
no dynamic.
we have no dynamic established. In the original story, you have moments like Blake voting for bunk beds. We
We
have
don't
moments.
get to see the bunk beds being made.
We get moments like Blake, the book lover, likes the series Ninjas of Love and is ashamed by it, but is still willing to like have them in the dorm room because she feels comfortable around her team. And one really little moment that is from the like obviously you couldn't do the episode immediately following Ruby being made team leader because in this version Weiss is cool with Ruby as team leader, but a scene that's honestly important for Blake's character relative to that is when Weiss is fighting the Borbatusk. Blake has a little picket flag with RWBY on it and is cheering Weiss on in a like demure but like enthusiastic way.
And it's extremely cute.
It's cute and it shows how much that Blake cares about her team because that's a goofy, silly, but very visible thing for someone so quiet to do in support of her teammate.
Mhm.
Like, it makes it very clear that these people are bonded in that way, and particularly that Blake is bonded with them and that they are bonded with Blake. So, like, because honestly, the first time, I think this is the second time Blake and Weiss have spoken to each other, is arguing over whether or not the White Fang is responsible for the most recent dust shop robbery.
Yeah, it did strike me that we see the like ramshackle, absolutely OSHA non-compliant bunk beds, but we never see how they got made. So like, if this is the only thing that you're reading, you're like, wow, Beacon has got some like student dorms.
It seems like Beacon is a shit show as opposed to what it actually is. It's them being quirky, the four of them being
It's
quirky.
them being it's them being a bunch of goobers, yeah.
Which is important to establish their rapport with each other.
Mm-hmm.
And then we get one of my least favorite, stupid, subtle, it shouldn't matter, but dear fucking God, it does changes. Sun's introduction.
Yeah,
This introduction.
for some reason, Sun Wukong is now Aladdin.
He's literally a criminal in this.
He's literally Aladdin. He gotta eat to live, gotta steal to eat.
Which he doesn't.
Yeah, he's just a dine and dasher with abs.
So the reason why Sun was being chased in the original story is because he stowed away on a ship. He didn't need to do that. He did it because it was fun, and it was a crime that didn't hurt anybody. He wasn't stealing anything. He did something that's strictly speaking wrong, but he did a victimless crime for fun, and then, had the fun of like running off and like, haha, I tricked you. Which is
Sun Wukong.
Yeah, it's harmless, it's cheeky, it's funny, it's charming, it establishes Sun, and the big thing is it lets Weiss be like, oh, look at that criminal, when only technically, and you really shouldn't be that harsh on him, he didn't really do anything bad.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in this version, he's just an actual thief. Like, everything Weiss says about him is literally true.
Yeah, he's
I think she accuses him of being. I think she accuses him of potentially being White Fang is the only thing that she gets wrong. But like, Weiss is supposed to be wrong here. It's the reason Blake gets so angry, so rightly angry.
Mm-hmm. Instead, it just makes Blake seem like an apologist for a criminal. Which, like, okay, dine and dashing, not the worst crime.
It's not the worst crime, and it's like the way Sun talks. It's the principle of the thing.
Yeah, it furthers the whole Faunus are criminals narrative.
Yeah, like it really does feel like, to some degree, it feels like the RWBY manga is almost anti-Faunus propaganda in the RWBY universe almost. Like, it's weird like that. And it's like, the way that Sun talks, it's like, it is implied that he's going to go back and pay eventually. Like, he's just going to go back to wherever he's staying, get money, and pay later.
Yeah, just put it on my tab, he says as he's running away.
But, like, he's still a dine and dasher. Why did you do that?
Mm-hmm. Because we needed to have him be cool and show off his abs, I guess.
You can just do what was done in the original show and have him be a stowaway. That's fine.
You know what'll help take your mind off it, Jacob?
Penny?
Salutations!
Yay, Penny!
Yay, Penny! God, I really like Penny in this.
Like, this is basically just straight up regular Penny, and she slots into this version of the story very well.
The art style and the like dialogue do a great job of making her seem, well, robotically stiff.
Yeah.
Like, RWBY runs into her, Penny, of course, unfazed, and is like, my apologies for being crashed into by you. Are you injured? She says as she leans over in a way that a normal person would not lean over. Let me give you my hand. Here is a very proper curtsy. My name is
love
Penny.
her little
Please.
curtsy. I don't think she originally does that, and she should. It's so cute.
My name is Penny. Please be my friends. Please be my friends. Leans into RWBY. Please be my friend.
Well, it's like they go, huh? Like they don't understand, so she repeats herself.
Please be my friend. No, you do not wish to be my friend. I was just using that as a filler.
That's not what I mean.
I was just using that as a filler word. Hey, girls, could you throw me a line hit?
And they've already ditched her.
No.
Thus establishes the other main ship for the main character.
Nuts and bolts. You just need to follow the safety sign. If this wasn't a purely auditory medium, I would put up the... If this wasn't a purely auditory medium, I would now put up the don't fist android girls warning sign. But yes, Weiss continues to bash the White Fang. Blake becomes increasingly defensive to the point of saying all we wanted was to be treated equal. We, what do you mean we? Blake runs away. Actually, we don't even get the what do you mean we, but it's...
Yeah, they just stare at her.
It's implied by their expressions. Also, problems with the manga. Sometimes I had trouble in like action scenes actually telling Weiss and Yang apart because they are both blonde. They are different kinds of blonde, but they are both blonde.
Yeah, if it's close enough up on their faces, it's a little hard to tell which is which.
Yep, and when the manga is doing its wildly flowing locks action scenes, I'm like, wait, which blonde is this? I can't see their outfits.
You gotta look for the side ponytail.
Yeah.
Or if you can see their necks, you can tell because the tops of their shirts are different.
But God, it's really obvious in like the individual like side by side panels of both their shocked expressions. It's like, oh wow, that if it weren't for the outfits, they would be indistinguishable. But yeah, Blake runs off. Smash cut to nighttime, where she takes.
Yeah, it is kind of interesting because the conversation in the original series happens in their dorm room. I also think maybe we were just tired of getting or maybe we were just tired of being pushed around, I think is Blake's line that sets all this off. And the big thing that I feel is kind of poignant is when she takes the ribbon off in the original series, she does it under a statue of a mixed group of human and faunus hunters and huntresses. As she's looking up at it, because she wants to be that instead of what the White Fang became.
Yeah. Meanwhile, in this one, she is.
She's doing it under a bridge because she's a D&D rogue.
He's so much of a D&D rogue. She's byronically contemplating the ribbon as words from her past flicker in between zoom-ins on her face and a shadowed figure in a mask. Who could it be?
Fuck Adam is in this manga. This manga is immediately worse. Now, maybe the manga could have actually had Adam be the character he was supposed to be. Show, don't tell. God, I hate Adam.
Okay, before Jake gets into it, Sun does show up.
Yeah, he does the friendly.
He's the other kind where he's still, sitting in weird locations, being a loner, but then is actually like friendly about it.
It is sort of interesting. The dynamic that Blake and Sun have is like a little bit more like this. Blake is less friendly because we don't have that quirkier side of her. Like we've not seen that. So like there's more about like Blake wanting to know Sun's motivations and not wanting to trust him because she doesn't know anything about him, et cetera, et cetera. There's more of a barrier between them that they actually get to talk out, which I think is kind of interesting. Because like when we see it in the original series, they already are like Blake is already pretty okay with Sun's presence, and like he shows up and then she's like, okay, I'll tell you my story. And she just does. Whereas in this version, it kind of has to be dragged out of her.
And I love the Sun being like, I'm definitely not a weirdo. I'm just a fellow faunus who wants to talk. Yeah, why did you hear everything you said? Well, I mean, I'm a pretty good eavesdropper. A page ago, you said that you were not a weirdo. Which one is it, Mr. Wukong?
He's a completely normal weirdo.
Yeah, but we cut back to the dorm room where
we get a little flashback of
RWBY being filled in on the drama and being very, very grumpy that she was having tea time with Penny while all this was happening.
Wait,
beating the crap out of a pillow.
Wait, you had tea with her?
That's not the point. Listen, it's fine. I'm sure Blake will come back. And all three of them not believing that. So
RWBY sneaks out at night. Unfortunately, RWBY has no idea where to look, so she bumps into Penny again.
Salutations! And we get a pretty sweet conversation here. RWBY and Penny commiserating on a bench where RWBY fills her in on everything that's happened. And it's like,
we don't have the fun moment of Penny knowing that Blake was a faunus immediately, and everybody being like, "Wait, what?
How did you know that? I have robot eyes." What? But we do have a nice moment here where RWBY's like, even if I found Blake, I'm not sure what I'd say to deal with this. And Penny's like, well, revelations or not, she's your friend, and that hasn't changed, has it? And intense zoom in on RWBY's face, and then a dramatically appropriate cutaway to the other scene because Blake and Sun are staking out a potential theft of a dust shipment by the White Fang. How did Sun know about this?
I don't know. If he's stowed away on a ship, he might be able to hear about that. But no, we have to establish him in a completely different way that undermines the Faunus as a section of world building in this story.
Okay, Jake, deep breaths.
Ugh.
Deep breaths, Jacob.
But yeah, this is where we get Blake explaining her backstory out loud.
Mm-hmm.
It is interesting because the way she talks about it, she implies she left the White Fang before they got violent.
Mm-hmm.
Which, if we're going by the Black trailer, that's not true.
Yeah, but also the trailers, we get a pretty explicit moment of no, actually. Jake, would you consider the thing that happens, the whole nothing that happens with Junior later, to be canonizing or decanonizing the Yellow trailer?
Circa the manga, I think
Mhm.
you're expected to have watched RWBY before you read this, which again is why I wish they were a bit more transformative with it. It doesn't really matter that much, but the fact of the matter is, to some degree, it almost, like, honestly kind of comes off like Blake might be lying. And I mean, like, that would be an interesting change.
Yeah, I mean, she also talks about how, oh, I was so ready to become a member as soon as they'd let me, not mentioning the fact that her father led it.
Her father founded it.
Yeah, pretty important lie of omission there.
Yeah, so it very much is the case where it's like, God, I wish this wasn't shovelware and actually like continued past where it ends. We did not read to its ending, but we got close to its end. Like I really do wish I could see the different directions you could take these characters. Also, it's worth noting at this point, Blake is functionally the main character of this story, which
Yes.
is a choice after all they did to establish RWBY as the protagonist and differentiate itself so heavily from the original story by having an explicit, like, suck all the focus main character protagonist. But hey, we gotta do what the show did, and this is what the show did next.
Which is a whole big Blake segment. So the White Fangs show up with Roman. I can't help but notice that apparently the clothes that make you look mysteriously naked appear to be a White Fang thing, because the
Their
White Fangs
shirts are, yeah.
I think that's supposed to be body armor, but like, you know how like ceremonial body armor or like ceremonial breastplates were carved to look like pecs and abs? It's that, and there's no like significant difference between the shading of the armor and their skin tone.
Yeah.
So they all look like they're in weird fetish gear as they're rolling up to steal industrial quantities of dust.
It's a choice.
It is very much a choice. We have more of Roman being incredibly theatric, which I kind of love.
Yeah, I like this version of Torchwick. He would not fit in this version of Torchwick, would not fit in the original series, but he works here.
He works here very well.
Because again, assuming you don't make Blake the main character, as they unfortunately do, he works as like the mountain for the protagonist to climb. You know, like he is someone who is so threatening that real huntsmen and huntresses can't stop him. So the protagonist potentially being able to do that and actually succeeding would be a very shonen moment for like RWBY to be able to like win the day in that sense.
So Blake is just like, the White Fang would never work with a human. What's going on here? And Sun's like, all right, maybe you shouldn't just jump straight in. And okay, are you going to like deal me in on what your plan is? Okay, she's already gone, as she's holding a knife to Roman's neck and saying, my comrades, cast off your chains and reclaim your honor. Why would you listen to this human? This villain? And nothing happens. Oh, kitty cat, did you think that they were taking orders from me? No, we're equals.
Yeah, it's relatively similar to the original story up until a really specific point where, because it's like then Sun jumps in and there's a big fight scene. It's relatively the same until Torchwick has one really fucking weird comment that I do not know why is a thing in this manga. Why did they make Torchwick racist?
Yeah, it's odd.
This is the true nature of all Faunus. That's not something that the original Torchwick would ever think to say.
If I have to like play devil's advocate for it, Torchwick he's a villain. He's a super villain. I imagine he's got a take what you can get, whatever you can hold on to is yours, might makes right like mindset. And he says that these Faunus and I are equals, and this is my philosophy, so therefore it's their philosophy too. And because they joined my side so easily, this is the true nature of them. It would be a lot more explicit if he said this is also the true nature of man, but he doesn't, so like it feels pretty racist.
It feels like he's just doing a racist at Blake, which is weird. And of course, the fighting draws Ruby and Penny eventually.
Yeah, it feels like he's juggling between being like some sort of like misguided idealist and also the kind of and also like a Joker type who would say anything to piss off his opponent.
Yeah, there is to some degree that he might have just said that to get in Blake's head because this Torchwick is threatening enough to pull off something like that.
He's got a degree of the Joker about him in that regard, yeah.
Yeah. Like he is significantly
and Blake,
more.
And Batman Blake is not, no matter how much brooding she does atop buildings.
Yeah, I mean, she mostly wears white instead of black, so.
Exactly.
But yeah, eventually the fighting draws Ruby and Penny.
While Blake is able to hold off the White Fang soldiers and Sun is 1v1ing Torchwick, Ruby shows up to provide reinforcements. Torchwick is like, all right, well, now that Red's here, I'm going to go. I'm sick of you meddling kids. I'm going to leave. Thankfully, my reinforcements are already here. Ruby is once again very much convinced that they are all going to die. But Penny
don't
is
worry, Penny's combat ready.
She shows up and Aurelia's all over the place, blowing up the 2 inbound reinforcement jets, and God, she looks menacing in this art style. Like the fire and the smoke silhouetting her as the blades fly at her command and take out the
with the glowing eye.
With the glowing eye. Nobody's allowed to hurt my friend. She says, posed up like she's some sort of blade-winged angel of vengeance. And all of the remaining members of the White Fang promptly shit themselves and surrender.
Penny's too good for this world.
She really is. Blake returns to Beacon. Well, actually, no, she doesn't return to.
The
rest of Team RWBY come to them.
Yang and Weiss come to the scene of the night's events.
The scene of the crime, literally the scene of the crime, actually.
And we get the reconciliation, of course.
And more Bumblebee propaganda as Yang takes out Blake with a flying tackle of a hug.
Must glomp. That is someone you're allowed to glomp, like Yang.
I really like this version of Yang when she's not being an enabler. Her exaggerated anime crying face, like, I'm so worried about you, is very cute. But the team reconciles. Sun is like, oh yeah, I'm one of the huntsmen here from Mestrel for the Vital Festival. Then why were you dining and dashing and being a criminal? Shut up.
Yeah, it made way more sense when you were just a fucking stowaway on a ship.
We have Penny being taken away by Ironwood, and now is the point where I was like, we haven't seen Cinder yet. Oh, hello, Cinder.
Yeah, she just kind of shows up now.
She's just there.
We do see Emerald and Mercury in extremely vague silhouette.
Oh, they are there, aren't they? I did not notice them. I thought they were just more blob shadows.
Nah, you can tell from the hairdo on. It's on Mercury. I don't know. Maybe he had a super speed semblance.
But Cinder is very ominously talking about the plan.
And as we established, Cinder is Sam's favorite.
Jake, I keep telling you, man, the audience doesn't know the end joke.
But it's really funny.
it is really funny that I find both of the fire-based ones very hot. But shut up.
Just wait until you get to Cinder's backstory.
He's convinced that as soon as I watch that, I will abandon all thoughts of Yang and immediately be like, I can fix her for Cinder, but the time shall tell.
That'll probably be another over echo chamber when I get to laugh about that being correct.
Who's ready for a food fight?
We get this bit. It happens differently, but it's the food fight scene. This is basically what Nora does. Most of this is just to establish Ironwood, who will proceed to do nothing for the rest of the manga.
Ironwood is established, and boy howdy, the art style does him no favors. He looks 10,000 years old. Why does he have so many wrinkles?
Because stress, I think, maybe.
Because this art style only makes the young and clear-skinned look dramatically handsome and pretty. It
Dehydrated Ironwood.
he's dehydrated Ganon. Suavemente.
Maybe that's Ironwood's problem. He just needs to drink more water and he'll be less authoritarian.
But he taunts Oz about how, are you ready to send your precious students onto the battlefield to die? And Oz is like,
yeah, probably.
Yeah, probably. I'm going to let them be kids while they have the chance. Also, dude, you absolutely know what my, entire thing is. Do you think I'm not gotten over sending people to their death by now?
Yeah. It is kind of an interesting conversation when you realize the things that they know about each other.
I'm literally older than your civilization.
I am literally the founder of this civilization. I don't think it's been explicitly confirmed, but the king that established the current kingdoms, like the Great King, is definitely one of Oz's incarnations.
We're gonna have to slap a big old spoiler warning on this episode.
If you're watching this, it's probably because you heard that season 10 is coming out, so you're probably current.
Probably. Apropos of nothing else for the discussion of this particular manga, that did always kind of niggle at the back of my mind. It's just like they're called the kingdoms, but we never have any talk of royalty.
That is, I don't know if you watched the. Oh no, you know what it is. So when I've been dragging him through RWBY recently, I've also been dragging another friend of ours through, but that other friend needed to catch up. So you haven't seen the World of Remnant videos recently. They were originally kingdoms, but then after the Great War, they became republics, but they're still referred to as kingdoms.
Right. Well, that answers that question.
Indeed. We also get the setup for the next big set piece after the food fight, which is Blake still wants to go after Torchwick. So let's go on a side mission.
Indeed.
And also Sun and Neptune are here. Though it is kind of funny that they don't actually establish the whole thing of Neptune being like, yeah, can I come inside? I'm kind of standing on the Eve's trough right now.
Real quick, this just confirms my theory that part of this manga's mission statement is to iron over some early installment weirdness, and that includes just zeroing right in on these boys gay, good for them, because they paper over the whole Weiss and Neptune thing.
Well, yeah, because I mean, not for nothing, one of the big things, one of the big reasons why the Weiss is a useless lesbian meme is a thing is because, God, she has such anti-chemistry with Neptune in particular. You could say that she has a bit of a dynamic with Jean if you really wanted to give her a straight ship, but it's not really. And then, with Neptune, it's almost like she's playing at pursuing him, but just she knows she should be attracted to him but isn't. That's the vibe. It's sort of the same thing as Bumblebee supposedly came about organically. It's Weiss not having any kind of chemistry with any male character is sort of the same thing, where it's like it's just the way that the voice acting and the physical acting of the animators made things play out. She knows she's supposed to like Neptune, but there's nothing there.
Yeah. Weiss, you useless lesbian.
We love the useless lesbian.
Yeah, time to hunt down some criminals.
Yeah. We get them splitting up. We get the bit with Junior. We skip over Weiss in the CCT tower dodging her family's
Entirely.
calls, which it's like that's not super important. And it again,
Yeah.
it stops to focus on Ruby and Penny because we get that bit.
Yeah, we get a brief moment of Ruby being like, all right, so this is your opportunity to introduce me to your folks, right? Beat as your bestest bud? No. What was that beat for, Ruby? You wanted to just leave it off and introduce me to your parents, didn't you? That's what you wanted to do, isn't it?
Filthy, filthy White Rose propaganda. Give me more.
But yes, we have Penny versus Truck-kun to save a boy from getting isekai'd.
God, that's actually plausible in this universe. More than you know, by the way, Sam.
Not responding to that one. Moving on. We have the whole revelation of Penny's true nature.
I will say one thing that I find a little disappointing is that Ruby grabs Penny and you know, semblances like petal bursts away with her. I do wish there was the thing about Ruby being like, oh my gosh, you are so heavy. Why are you so heavy? We don't get that, but otherwise the scene is the same. Also more nuts and bolts propaganda, which I am also cool with.
Absolutely. It's extremely cute. And
the scene between Ruby and Penny in the previous arc gets called back to where Ruby is like, yeah, this doesn't bother me. We're still friends. That's the important part, right? And then Glomp is cute.
It's so freaking cute, dude. It makes my heart so warm. Yes, whilst this is happening, Blake and Sun have infiltrated the White Fang.
Like a White Fang recruitment drive.
Yeah. It's interesting, actually. Blake calls it a collective, and also, like, she uses comrades before, so it's much more, like, explicit communist language than there is in the show, to my recollection, at least.
I mean, she will occasionally call White Fang, like, comrades, but...
Yeah, it's like comrades is here or there, but calling a gathering of the White Fang a collective is much more, you know.
It synergizes with comrades, and she only calls them comrades in this. Yeah, that's weird. I don't know if that's a thing.
I don't know. I don't know if that's like.
It makes me wish there was more of this that could have like done something with that.
And also, like, the way that the White Fang kind of operate, it's, like, that's not an out of left field take on them.
Yeah, because, like, demands of equality, like, true equality.
Yeah.
And it's, like, because, and it, like, not for nothing, but something that is explicitly true about RWBY and, like, the way that their racism metaphor works, the way that their, like, the faunus metaphor works is, it is the machine of capitalism that is like driving them under the heel of humans, despite the supposed equality. Like it does play out in similar ways to like the middle part of the like not yet like the like named civil rights movement moment, but like the middle part between emancipation and that is where the faunus are right now in universe. So you know, like they're being an appeal to dismantling the system at a fundamental level. And Torchwick even has a bit of a speech that kind of like fits in with that. You know, like it doesn't. I didn't notice it. It's not like explicitly a like call for the proletariat or anything, but like it does have that vibe to it. I didn't notice that. That's an interesting take. Because the Shnees are so specifically tied into like faunus oppression and stuff, and the Shnees represent like that kind of late stage capitalism.
Yes, but before we can get too deep into that, Torchwick is like, "Yes, my friends, behold the sick ass mecha that I stole.
I've got a couple of these."
Now watch as I test it out on our intruders. Oh crap, he means us. We should leave.
Again, this is a somewhat different version of a set piece from the original series.
Yep, now it's time for the Paladin fight.
Torchwick is at his most menacing by far here.
He is like full Gundam antagonist.
He's a Char clone. Oh my god,
Yeah.
he's literally a Char clone. What the fuck? What the fuck, man? I mean, I'm not against it, but what the fuck?
He's not, oh my god, he's not wearing the mask, but he's associated with people who do?
Oh my god, he's literally a Char clone. What the I hope it's in black and white. I hope that Elysian Paladin isn't red, or it'll be 5 times faster than a normal Paladin.
But it plays more
No,
like
RWBY is 5 times faster.
Yeah, it plays more like an armored core the way that it operates, because it is zipping all over the place and firing gajillions of missiles.
And Sun sends Blake to go collect everybody to fight it.
Mm-hmm.
And Sun gets the shit beat out of him.
Yeah, bro gets put through the ringer. Like he gets slapped into the pavement just in time for Neptune to show up and provide some assistance. But this is really where the art style making for bad action scenes really grated on my nerves.
Yeah.
Because, wow, you did not want to draw backgrounds, did you? So everything is just full of dust and rubble and smoke and steam. And it's like, all right, so this is entirely in a white void of this mecha versus this boy, and the camera can't stay focused on the mecha long enough for us to get an idea of its like shape and dimensions, or like how it can turn.
It's not very good at conveying information about the fight.
Mm-hmm. The way that it is taken down is Sun douses
Dumps
it
a
in
bunch
water.
of water on Neptune, which he's not happy about.
Yeah, he douses Neptune and the Paladin in water, which conducts a whole bunch of electricity through Neptune's semblance. And while it doesn't,
I think that's his weapon, because the semblance is Nora's.
All right. But while it doesn't completely short-circuit the Paladin, it does fry a bunch of its more delicate systems. So when Team RWBY shows up, they are able to kick the crap out of it without the assist. And Roman is basically left blind and deaf because it doesn't have its radar or missile lock-on anymore.
Yeah, the interesting thing is they actually have a lot of trouble with the thing.
Mm-hmm.
They get Team RWBY gets the shit kicked out of them too. And
oh yeah,
which is not what happens in the original. They were fine.
We have the entire dramatic thing of like big explosion, dust clears, like friends are like lying in craters, and the villain starts monologuing at the main character, who is not RWBY. It is Blake.
But
God,
then
who's this manga named after again?
I know, like, if you're gonna so heavily focus on RWBY, like, have this be about RWBY, but
well, technically it's named after all 4 of them because it's the team name, but
I could see potentially having a thing where it's like you have like a macro arc about each of them, but in all honesty, considering how much of the manga is left after this because we're nearing the end of our reading, I doubt that would have actually happened.
Yeah, it'd have been cool though.
Yeah, I still think laser focusing on RWBY and, you know, peeling back her layers would have been the better call, but you would have had to have changed some things, which I would have been okay with because I don't want to just see the exact same thing again.
Yep.
They are able to rally team attack and take down the Paladin
in a whole bunch of smoke.
And I'm sure they did things.
I'm sure they did things indeed. But Torchwick is very menacing. They try to do the cannonball maneuver again, and he's like, "Omoshiroi."
But yeah, this is also where we get our introduction of Neo.
Yes, because as the paladin is defeated, Torchwick staggers out of it almost entirely unharmed, and
Doesn't even really stagger out of it. He swaggers out of it.
yeah. And Neo shows up to help him make the
Facilitate
exit.
his escape.
Yep.
And like
you know what? For the page and a half that she's here, I really like Neo. I love her in the show so much, and they get a lot of her energy across in this. Just the side eye she gives Roman with the ...
I know. Cinder's hopping mad, right?
It's so
Though,
cute.
again, with Torchwick being hideously menacing, Neo uses her illusion semblance. Does Neo have two semblances? Because she has the disguise thing, and then she also has this. Or maybe that's Torchwick's.
It might be.
Do we know what Torchwick's semblance is?
I don't think we do.
Because Neo does that herself later, but like, I could see some weird Salem experiment that gave like Neo part of Torchwick's semblance or something.
Yeah.
And then season 9 happens.
We get one moment of absolutely brilliant paneling where like RWBY goes to swing at them and it shatters the illusion. And as the little pieces of glass are flying away, it one piece of glass outside of the borders of the panels reflects Roman's eye right over RWBY's like expression of consternation.
He looks so fucking menacing. I'll leave my glass slipper behind, so to speak, until we meet again. Supervillain that he is.
It's so good. I'm like, who the fuck is this guy?
He really is a Batman villain.
Yep. We end with the cliffhanger of our next villains showing up as Cinder, Mercury, and Jade go to infiltrate Beacon.
Emerald. Cinder, Mercury, and Emerald.
Cinder, Mercury, and Emerald go to infiltrate Beacon. Something schoolgirl Cinder, something bark, end of reading.
That is the end of the second volume of 3, so we're probably not going to be doing another episode on this, but
probably not. But as always with the shonen manga, favorite character and favorite fight. God, I want to say Yang so bad, but honestly, it's probably RWBY. Because I really like the new direction with her. Again, they could have gone harder on it. There could have been more done with it. But for what they did, I liked it. And I think it's a fun alternative idea. For favorite fight, God, I really did not like the fights at all.
Yeah, it's kind of a black mark on this adaptation.
Basically, none of them. I keep thinking about the different fights, and I keep just thinking about the show, because the show fights are so good!
Which is your favorite fight from the show?
The Nevermore.
Of course.
In this particular section, it's the Nevermore. The Paladin is really close second. Like, really close. But that's also because the Paladin fight in the show is basically a Sonic the Hedgehog boss. So, it appeals to my particular brand of autism. How about you, Jake?
Favorite character, honestly, it would probably also be RWBY, but just to be different, I'm going to shout out Weiss instead, because I like the ways, like, Weiss is so similar, and yet the way that she interacts with RWBY makes her be different. And I think that's really interesting. The fact that she is not really transformed in any meaningful way, and yet is still somehow a different character because the world in which she exists is slightly different. I really like the idea that she's okay in this version with RWBY being team leader because it's so radically different, and yet it feels properly motivated, which I think is a good indication of, if they had just gone for it, they could have actually made for a really, really good alternate take on the story. Favorite fight, in all honesty, I think the Nevermore fight from the manga, and I will say from the manga, it's decent. It's not quite so incomprehensible. You can follow what's going on for the majority of it.
Yeah.
And it is a different take on the same thing. It presents the Nevermore as significantly stronger and smarter, which I think is cool. Um, and I like the ways in which like all four members of the team are all equally contributing in the big final moment, which is not really how it works in the original show. Yang and Blade kind of get a little bit left to the wayside.
Hmm.
Uh, so it's kind of interesting here that this manga, which so heavily laser focuses on RWBY to the exclusion of the ensemble cast, actually makes the full four members of Team RWBY more involved in the big moment from this section of the story. But yeah, as adaptations go, and quite frankly, I do think that that's the primary way in which you can really experience this. There is a strong element of you'd better have watched the original show before you read this, because otherwise there are giant chunks missing. I would not recommend this to anybody who isn't already a big time RWBY fan and is just starving for more content. And hey, it's not missing currently. Hopefully, by the time you're listening to this, dear listener, that will have changed for RWBY as a whole. But currently, there is a bit of a drought.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
It
and
is
it's like,
deeply unfortunate, the current state of being able to watch this legally.
better hope you have physical media. But yeah, so like as adaptations go, this is one of the many cases that I've seen. There's an idea here. There is a thread of a different version of the story that's still recognizably the original, and yet different enough that it's intriguing for returning audiences, yet could also just be good on its own. But like a lot of adaptations, it is pulled between, do we just make it the original or do we do something different with it? And it falls in the middle, which is the worst place to be and the least interesting place to be. I want to read more of this manga, but I want to read more of a different version of this manga that is untethered from the source material and just uses it as the inspiration and is its own unique thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I'm with you on that one. So this relied so heavily on the original in a way that I think is unhealthy for an adaptation.
Yeah.
And it's really grating because it was so close to being its own thing, but then we I don't want to harp on it any longer. We spent the last 2 hours basically harping on it, but suffice to say, I agree with you on it. But with that in mind, would you continue reading?
It's only one more volume, and I feel a little obligated to finish it off. It's not a lot to go through.
It's hard to justify not just because of the amount that's left. I don't know.
And in all honesty, as much as it frustrates me a lot, it's at the very least, it's given me fan fiction ideas. I love to write this. I'd love to write the version that this could be, and just reading through the rest of what exists could be a good catalyst for. Like again, it's one of those ones where it's like, is Summer alive in this version? Because it really does kind of feel like Summer's alive in this version.
It really does.
Or like I could see it being a thing of, it's like Summer went missing, she wasn't confirmed dead or something. So it's like there's an element of RWBY and Yang believe she's still out there or something, and like that's a primary motivator for one or both of them. So there's a lot interesting that could be here, but it only goes until the end of season 2, which is one more arc. So that's kind of disappointing, but it does mean it's easy to just finish off in a day.
But yeah, with all that in mind, thank you everybody once again for tuning in to the Over Manga Cast. As always, you can find us on all your social medias, where we are at Over Manga Cast.
You can also find us on YouTube, where you can like, comment, and subscribe. Those episodes go up on a 2-week delay, so if you want to catch our up-to-date stuff, you head over to overmangacast.com. That even has a comment section where you can tell us what you think of the series, what you think of the original, what you think of adaptations. What are some other adaptations we could talk about? Because in all honesty, much as this isn't our normal fare, I really did enjoy doing the compare and contrast.
Indeed, and we appreciate reviews in any and all forms. Go ahead, give us a 5-star on or a thumbs up or whatever it is on your particular podcatcher of choice. You know we deserve it. We're giving you that good, sweet content, that good stuff that you
We
listen
read
to on your...
RWBY the official manga for you. What more could you ask for?
Well, be careful with that one, Jake, because they could mean something pretty bad.
As long as it's not Dragon Ball Super. Stop typing. Stop it.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.